game anymore? I mean, what's it all about? Are we just lemmings packed into shiny metal boxes? Contestants in a suicidal race? Where is the love? I mean, where is the love? If we don't start talking to each other and really working to understand what it is and where we're going to go, then what's going to happen? Mass hysteria? Cats and dogs living together? I mean, I really appreciate y'all being here. It's really nice to have good friends.
Did you say something?
Mom? Oh, jeez, you were here?
No.
We got a little pizza, right?
Welcome to the second part of our three-part series on compromise.
Remember, in part one, we learned about handling our big-time feelings when we recognize we are in competition.
Yeah, and in the next lesson, we're going to learn the techniques of compromise. But before we can have hopes of learning about compromise, we need to spend some time learning about culture, perspective, opinion, and empathy.
Wowza! That's a lot of things to define. Culture, perspective, opinion, and empathy.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Three of those words, culture, empathy, and perspective, are in the definition of social awareness that we use in the Washington State K-12 benchmarks for social emotional learning. Here, we define social awareness as the ability to take the perspective of and empathize with others from diverse backgrounds and cultures.
Okay, so we better get to defining.
Let me tell you about the Proto culture. If you don't know the culture, here's the whole structure. We had enough of the lackluster. Trust us, we get the kind of games you can't win.
Culture is a word for people's way of life, meaning the way groups do things.
Different groups of people may have different cultures.
Culture can be found in things that people do that are passed on from one generation to the next.
Right, like something your parents may have learned from their parents and so on.
Culture can be seen in people's writing, religion, music, clothes, cooking, and what they do.
Culture can be viewed as the customs, art, and social interactions of a particular nation, people, social group, or institution.
Culture can also include what we believe to be right or wrong, how we eat, how we greet visitors, how adults treat kids, how kids treat adults, how adults treat each other, how kids treat each other, how we behave with loved ones, how we act in school, how we act in classrooms, and a million other things.
Culture is also something that can be created. Schools work hard to create a unique culture where all different cultures are welcome to work together.
When you made your emotional intelligence charters, you were helping create the culture of your classroom or grade level.
When you use your SEL skills of social awareness, you are considering the perspective of a person from a different culture than your own. Music culture!
Circus culture?
Circus culture!
Teacher culture!
Thank you, students. Why did we define culture first?
Because culture informs everything. Culture happens to us. We are born into culture. We learn about the world as we begin to understand the culture we are born into, a process we call enculturation.
Yeah, as we grow and meet others, there can be a sharing of different cultures. When different cultural practices are adopted or stolen from one culture to the next, we call this acculturation.
When we are young, adults make the culture around us. As we grow, we shape our culture with our peers. Eventually, as we become adults, we repeat the cycle for a new batch of kids. It's the circle of life.
Well, aren't you just the Lion King?
Lion King? Is that enculturation or acculturation?
Well, it probably depends on who you ask. And that is how perspective works. The culture or cultures you are a part of will shape your perspective about something or someone. So now we need to define perspective.
Here are some students sharing about perspective.
The word perspective means a particular attitude towards something or way of regarding something. Or more simply, perspective means a point of view. Think about this glass of milk. That's water in a measuring cup. Oh my gosh, Mr. Manzo, come on, dude. What's your budget? Think about this water in a measuring cup. Is it half full or is it half empty? Well, that would depend on your perspective. I see this glass as half full, and from my perspective, it's half empty. There is no actual right or wrong. There are simply two different perspectives. Here's another example. I love the Seahawks. They're my favorite team. The last game of the season was terrible. The Seahawks lost to the Rams. It was an awful game. That's not true. I love the Rams. It was a great game.
I'm from New Orleans, and it should be the Saints.
See, that's perspective. Perspective is like saying there are two sides to every story. If you'd like to read some example of how writers show perspective, I'd like to recommend the book Flipped. It's an amazing book. Or for a read aloud, try What If Everybody Did That? These are both great books. Well, see, that's perspective.
Thank you, students. That was really tremendous.
Really? I thought the kids did great, but I think your ability to capture quality sound and your limited understanding of lighting really keeps us in the minors.
Oh my gosh. Guess what you just expressed?
What?
An opinion. An opinion is a belief. An opinion comes after a perspective. For example, as a teacher, you're part of a culture of people that show these videos in classes. When you show the video, you need to ride the volume on the speaker so that when it's sometimes too quiet, you can turn it up, and when it's sometimes too loud, you can turn it down.
Right, like when commercials are louder than the show you're watching. I hate that.
Exactly. Your teacher culture informs you about the amount of work you need to do to help students engage with these videos. Your perspective is that these inconsistencies in volume, sometimes too quiet, sometimes too loud, impact student engagement. Your opinion is that I need to make the sound more stable to help kids get more engaged in the material.
That's right. So how is that not a fact?
Well, it's based on a fact. There are inconsistencies in the volumes of these videos. However, that may not be the cause of low engagement. Low engagement may come from really long times of adults talking and not enough stuff like this.
So my opinion is based on my perspective, which is shaped by my culture.
Right. Here are some kids talking about opinions.
An opinion is a belief or view or judgment about something.
Opinions are not necessarily based on a fact or knowledge. Some are and some aren't.
Individuals can have opinions and groups of people can share opinions. In fact, sometimes the things that hold a group together are the opinions they share.
Opinions can be tricky because it can sometimes be hard to tell if someone is sharing a fact, is based on a fact, or simply something they believe or feel.
And it can be hard too if what someone is saying is fact or opinion, but there are some clues to help you figure it out.
Most often, opinions have emotion or feeling involved with them. People may start an opinion by saying, I believe, or I feel, or they might say, in my opinion.
Facts, on the other hand, can be proven. Facts don't have feelings. People can have opinions about facts. But opinion cannot be proven, so if you hear something that can't really be proven, it's most likely an opinion.
There's an old saying about opinions. Opinions are like noses. Everybody has one, and most of them smell.
Donuts have sugar. Donuts are the best in the whole entire world. Yeah!
This copier makes copies. Better than the last one.
And in New Orleans, we eat crawfish.
What's crawfish?
River bugs.
Ugh! Oh!
DJ Marshmallow is the best DJ. Whoa, Mr. Manzo, your office is really messy.
Well, that's your opinion.
No, it's a fact.
I don't know. Seems like even water is wetter than when I was a kid.
My world is like a river, as dark as it is deep.
Man, I'm really feeling for old Mr. Keneally. Even water's getting wetter. Sad.
Hey, do you know what you just did?
Mm-mm.
You just used empathy.
Oh.
Empathy is sharing in the feelings of others. You just shared in Mr. Keneally's sadness and nostalgia about his mythical childhood, since water isn't any wetter in 2019 than it was in 1982.
Oh, that's awesome.
Empathy is awesome. In this whole cycle, empathy becomes the pivot that allows us to connect with other people. Empathy is the pivot word.
Pivot is a PE word.
A pivot is when you have one foot that stays in a position and you rotate around that foot. What the heck?
A pivot is also a central point, pin, or shaft of which a mechanism turns or oscillates. And you know, I'm more than just a drummer, guys. I have a magnificent brain here.
What an awesome school we have. I'm really feeling sad for our engineer. He seems lonely.
Well, there's that darn empathy again. And here's some kids talking about empathy.
Empathy means the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person.
The word empathy is a noun. To have empathy for someone is to try to put yourself in another person's situation in order to try to experience the same feelings they are feeling.
The word empathetic is an adjective that describes someone who is using empathy. When we use empathy to try to feel what others are feeling, we are being empathetic.
The word empathize is a verb. Empathizing is an action that you can try to feel what someone else is feeling.
Here is an example of someone using empathy or being empathetic.
Suppose your friend tells you that he isn't going to get to play basketball at recess anymore.
You know he loves to play basketball, so if you stop and think about how you would feel if you were not able to do something that you really love to do, you would be using empathy or being empathetic.
Or imagine if you saw someone trip and fall in front of the whole class. If you imagine how it might hurt your body, or if you would feel embarrassed, then you are being empathetic.
When you stop and think about it, you will see there are many chances to use empathy.
When someone asks you the question, how would that make you feel, or how would you feel if that happened to you, they're asking you to use empathy.
If you are looking for a good read-aloud book that shows characters using empathy, I would recommend The Teddy Bear by David McPhail.
If you are looking for a chapter book that shows characters using empathy, try out Wonder, or maybe you can watch the movie.
I imagine that would make you and me happy.
Man, I was really nervous for you guys.
That's using empathy!
Here are some questions you can ask yourself to help build your self and social awareness when you are thinking about culture, perspective, opinion, and empathy.
Here are some questions you can ask yourself to help you build your self-awareness.
Ask yourself, what is my perspective?
Ask yourself, how do I feel in my body when I hold my point of view?
Ask yourself, how do I want to express my point of view?
Ask yourself, what choices do I have to do to express my point of view? Here are some questions you can ask yourself to build your social awareness.
Ask yourself, how do I recognize the perspective in my group?
Ask yourself, how do I recognize the perspective of other groups?
Ask yourself, how does my culture influence my perspective?
Ask yourself, how might someone else's culture influence their perspective?
Our transition word for February is empathy, and the response is how others feel. Let's try that together. Empathy.
How others feel.
Empathy.
How others feel. Empathy. How others feel. Yeah!
Okay. Yeah, no. Okay, we're going to go. Okay, that was a ton of information. Here's our recap.
Yeah, we learned about culture, perspective, opinion, and empathy.
We also learned that empathy is the pivot word.
And this is a perfect time to start or to continue doing this work as we are recognizing Black Lives Matter at school.
When you think about the Black Lives Matter movement and what the organization stands for and is working for, consider your own culture. How does your culture inform your perspective? From your perspective, can you recognize your opinion or opinions? Once you've done this, use your empathy to consider someone else's opinion. What is their perspective and how does their culture inform them?
Having these skills is exactly how people can come together to try to solve problems, even when those people are coming from different places.
Actually, these skills would be especially helpful when people are coming from different places.
Well, that's why this matters. Diversity of culture, diversity of perspective, diversity of opinion can not only strengthen a community, it can help move a community forward to discover new things, all kinds of things. New technologies, new ways to treat people, new medicines, new ways to help the environment, and new art.
So it is essential that people get the skills for all of us.
Yeah, and these skills are going to be absolutely necessary when we start talking about compromise. Because if you don't have an understanding of your culture, of your perspective, of your opinion, and also of others, it's not likely that you're going to be able to be very successful in compromise.
Well said.
All right, take it away.
The city streets are empty now. The lights don't shine no more. And so the songs are way down low. Turn it, turn it.
Are you ready? Man, are you ready?
Oh, you're not actually ready again. Man, I was looking first for you guys.
For you guys, go, go.
Man, I'm first for you guys. Man, I was first for you guys.
I'm sorry. Are you ready?